DJ PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. We are joined by Tim LaComb, jazz analyst for SEG Media. Tim, good morning.
Good morning. Good to be with you.
Little Sinatra this morning in honor of the late Frank Layden. You worked in the basketball community. You ever rub elbows with Frank Layden? End up with any stories?
Yeah, I met him, several times in different places. He and Coach Majerus were very close, so he was around a lot at Utah. But then, just ran into him at different events. And, I just got to concur with something I saw today. I really do believe his mission in life was to try to make people smile. An authentic guy, a guy that, you saw what he was, and he was just an awesome ambassador for basketball in the state. I remember when, I was young enough to remember when the Jazz came to Utah. I was this young kid, and he was bigger than life, and I think did a really good job at assimilating NBA basketball here in the state and kind of being the face of it. I think the thing I'll always remember is the duel with Pat Riley when he pulled his comb out.
Yeah.
At midcourt and started slicking his hair back.
Got a rise out of Riley.
Just a wonderful, wonderful guy. Will be missed. And, I love the opportunity I had to get to talk to him a few times.
I think we all did, and that's well said. I think all of us who've had any form of interaction with him, he was the broadcaster for Ute games for a while when I was the beat writer, so I got to spend some time with him there and vacation with him in Mexico. So, yeah, played golf with him. My wife played golf with him. I told the story earlier this morning. Steve Clockie got run over by a truck a year ago, just about, 13 months ago, and so unfortunate there, and he lost his life, and they had a celebration of life ceremony there at the cemetery, and the line was out the door 3 hours after it was supposed to be over. But Frank came in, and he was in a wheelchair, and he called me. He had golf with my wife, and he called me over, and I bent down so I could hear him, and he says, "Is your wife still beating you in golf?" And I said, "Yes, she is." So he remembered the times that we had played golf together, and that's just the way he was, man. Incredible memory, incredible way to connect with people that all of us can use as an example in ways to live our lives. He was an example in that way, and so his just reward certainly is coming his way. As far as the basketball, I didn't see the third game, but I watched the first two. I was down in Dallas watching the second game for the Big 12 Media. And I like what I saw at Ace, but I didn't really see anything that surprised me. I mean, I think this kid has a chance to be a really good player, and I'm going to stick with that. I don't see anything to make me think otherwise.
I think the thing that really stands out to me, and I get a kick out of it because, Jazz Twitter's a thing, and during the first quarter of the game against Oklahoma City, when they were just getting drilled, everybody was, starting to make rash statements after about 6 quarters of basketball with the guys that met each other the Wednesday previous. So, I mean, there's a lot that goes into this thing, and my observations were simply that, Ace showed that he can get 20 a game without even having a play run for him. And I really think that was kind of the essence of what Salt Lake Summer League was about. You look at the boxes, and I think Ace, the 2 games he played, he had 7 offensive rebounds. I mean, he's an absolute – that's what stood out to me was he's a problem on the offensive glass because of his size, and he has a real good knack to go get that ball. That led to baskets. And I remember, I think I've told this story, but I'll tell it again because it's a good one. Al McGuire, Majerus told me a story that Al would tell recruits, you want to make $1 million, come play for us at Marquette. And they'd get there and like, okay, how do I make my $1 million? And Al McGuire said, every time the ball's shot, go get the rebound. And, if you keep doing that over a 4-year period, you're going to make millions of dollars. And so I think that's what stood out to me. It was exciting. He's a tough shot maker, but his knack to go get the ball and the pressure that puts on the other team. It's like running the floor. If you're constantly running the floor, the other team doesn't go, as hard at the glass because they've got to get back. They've got to account for your pace of play. Similar thing on the glass. I mean, if you've got guys that just pound the boards, and Walker Kessler is a great offensive rebounder, led the NBA last year in contested rebounds, but you get guys that are pounding the glass every time, that can really slow down another team's break and other things. So that was just a little minute detail I saw. And then I loved, Clayton's going to assimilate over time, but what he did do in summer league is what he did in college. He made big shots at timely moments. And when a guy can do that, that's a really great skill.
If a guy's been in the league a couple of years and shot 42% for three, shouldn't he go into summer league, score 37 points? And at that point, is there any point in Bryce sense about playing anymore? You looking for something else out of him?
No, I think that was just a really good opportunity. Again, there's a lot of things that are going on behind the scenes that people ask, why are they doing that? But, sometimes there's you want to have some veterans with the young guys to set the tone. You don't want to have – you also may do that to get the veterans team a bit more confidence. There's lots of different reasons to do it. But, yeah, he did exactly what I expected him to do. His shot's looking really good. His pace of play, the shot selection, it's almost as though they said, Bryce, just go lead this team. Go find a way to do whatever you got to do to lead this team. And he was great. I thought Collier played good in stretches. Too many turnovers, but again, I almost talk about familiarity, spacing is a great. Majerus, again, we once said spacing is offense. Offense is spacing. If you don't have great spacing, turnovers are going to be more readily available. And I think, sometimes Collier tried to push it in spots that maybe weren't there. But overall, I think everybody showed well. And, Cody Williams showed he's put on a little bit of weight. He's a little bit more ready for the NBA. So lots of different things to monitor.
From my perspective, getting rid of Collins, Sexton, and Clarkson and Collins, they're all fine players, but I'd rather not have them around to go through the dog and pony show that we went through last year. And I recognize that the team may struggle and may not win even as many games as they did last year, or maybe surprise and win 10 more. But the fact of the matter is, the reasons that I just stated, I don't know if they're going to win 17. I don't know if they're going to win 27. And I don't know who's going to emerge, is just the number one reason why I want to watch. It's kind of a twisted way. I'm not necessarily watching for winning, but I'm just watching to see how it all plays out. Whereas last year, I was like, who's going to be available, what excuses they're going to come up with, and blah, blah, blah. Well, get rid of all that stuff and then put the ball up there and throw it up for a center jump, and let's see what we got. And to me, even though that doesn't necessarily mean to lead to a lot of wins, it gives me a form of excitement that I want to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I think, having ingested nearly all 82 last year, I think I missed 2 games. But I agree. I think, on a nightly basis, those veterans were there, and if they were available, they needed to play some. And it made it really difficult last year to try to figure out, the end game. I do see a lot of people saying, they held on to guys too long, and I don't think that was the case at all. I think these guys, those 3 guys particularly, were part of conversations over the last 3 years, and I think they finally just decided, to take what was out there. I'd hope that John had maybe, with his year last year, played himself into being maybe worth a little bit more. And, at the end of the day, there's a lot of opinions on guys that have been in this league and those sometimes are hard to break. But the bottom line is we're going to be able to see these young guys in all situations now. There isn't going to be necessarily that buffer. Those guys are going to have to go out and figure it out. It's going to require some solid play from a couple of dudes that maybe have been up and down, but that's what Coach Hardy talked about last year. It's the essence of the NBA is to be game ready every night that you've got one, and go out there and compete with everything you got. And it's a consistency thing. It's a mindset thing. That's going to be part of what these guys learn. But I too am excited because I want to see, at the end of the day, I want to see what they have. I want to see what they have game 1 and then game 40 and then game 80, watch it through the process. If you do that, you can see a guy like Walker Kessler 2 years ago who was, he was in a very bad spot. And then last year he worked himself out of it by just leaning into what he does great. So to me, that's the essence of this whole process is, it's not going to be over this year. We know that. And this team is going to take their lumps, but it's going to be a little bit different. And I would expect that they'll win more than the number because when Will Hardy's got some consistency with lineups and things like that, he's been pretty darn good. So I'm excited to see what these young guys can do for sure.
It's crazy how the league swings back and forth for a long time. If you had a veteran player, you could probably get draft picks or maybe some young talent. But the teams that need veteran players right now don't have any cap room. So veteran players who make money, they just don't look like they're worth very much right now.
Yeah, and seems to be the same suitors all the time, the guys that have burned through all their quid. The Clippers, I just chuckle. I saw that Beal may be going to the Clippers, and I'm just like, these are almost like outposts for bad contracts, some of these places. But, yeah, you make a great point. I mean, with the cap and with the repeater tax and everything else, obviously financial piece of this is really important. So some teams, choose, like Indiana chooses not even to swim in those ponds. But it's definitely cyclical, and there are teams out there who will pay some of these older guys. But the bottom line is what the Jazz got back was pretty much what was, I think, being offered through the years, as they went through this process with these guys.
I do think if the Jazz win the Summer League that they'll make a strong push for the playoff.
You do?
No.
Okay. I just needed to make sure I heard that right. You were trying to make sure I was listening, weren't you?
Yeah, solid follow-up by you, though. Just you do? This gets right to the heart of the matter. You broke them down pretty quick.
Playoffs, no, but I think, honestly, I do believe that they'll overexceed the expectations because I think two things. I think they've got talented guys. The last couple of years, drafts have been good. And with some tough luck with Hendricks, last year we didn't get to see a lot of him. But we're talking about a guy like Sensabaugh. We're talking about, Collier, who can be a solid guy in this league. And much like Sexton, if he can just kind of keep continuing to tailor his game and cut out things that don't work, which he can do over time. But, yeah, they've got a ton of talent, but I believe in this coaching staff. I really do. I think Will's terrific, and I think his guys develop players well. So if the bar is set at 18, I'd be willing to say they're going to win 5 to 10 more than that.
Yeah, okay. I just want to see them all swim.
Some nights they're just going to play harder than other teams. You know what I mean? That was one of the tough things last year was when you didn't know if you were in or you're out.
Right.
It's hard every night. But they can be one of those teams that just next year I expect that's what we'll ask of these guys, and I think that they'll outplay some teams and maybe win a few more games than they would have.
I like the fact that they're all basically of the same generation, same NBA experiences. Everybody's different from where they come. It doesn't matter what you look like. We're all different one from another. But I like the fact that it's like, all right, guys, here we are. It's our group. Zippo believes in us. Vegas has got us the worst team in the league. What are we going to do about it, man? And you got all these guys, 18 or 19 to 23, 24. They all can relate relatively well to each other because they've only been a year or two. I mean, Kessler's going to fourth year, but the other guys have all just barely. They all should still be in college if it was the old days where they played 4. They all, literally all of them except Kessler, would still be in college, and Clayton is the other one too, obviously. But I think that can bind them and has some unique experiences together that can help them over the long term.
Yeah, you're looking for any advantage, and I do think that having a very kind of like-aged locker room where nobody's giving you any credit, that's a great place to start, that chip on your shoulder. And, yeah, I mean, they're going to take their lumps this year. There's no question about it. But I'm excited because it was plays like the other night where, you cannot teach this. There's a ball shot. Ace comes flying in on the offensive glass, catches it basically at the apex. He comes down and gathers himself, takes one dribble, and off one leg, a little fader. And, you can throw a name in there. I mean, it was Durant-esque, I guess. But that is the one thing that over the entire summer league that made me salivate, because those are just certain things you can't teach. The timing, the length, the touch, the feel. I think they've got an all-star in Ace. I think this kid's going to be an all-star, and I think his journey is going to be really fun to watch. It's already off with a bang because, pundits got in and tried to mess with it. But the bottom line is the dude's here, seems happy to be here, and like you said, a locker room that's going to rely on him, but also support him, and then a great coaching staff with development. I'm excited to see his trajectory change, from October to, say, February, and then obviously into the summer, and just kind of see what he does over that time. But I dare say, in watching Summer League, I think he might be the most talented prospect the Jazz have ever drafted.
Ooh.
Well, they've drafted some Hall of Famers, so strong words right there, Tim.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm not saying end result. I'm talking just here's the guy that you get to mold. I think he's the most talented guy, in all the areas: length, reach, size, touch, skill. I think he's the best. Like, here I am, make me what you're going to make me. I think he's the best prospect standing there for that to happen.
Well, in the first quarter of his first Summer League game, he beat his guy off the dribble, to your point, missed the shot, hit the floor, went and got the rebound, missed that shot, hit the floor, and went back up again and tipped it in. That's a lot of athletic ability. You spent a lot of time trying to find somebody who could hit the floor and go back up like that one time, and he did it twice, right out of the gate.
Yeah, and so it's little plays like that. His, that dunk he had with just a little extra on it, where it seemed like he hung for another hour. The alley-oop was great. But, I saw they're not even running plays for Ace. Well, guess what? That's what Summer League's about. Maybe the challenge is go find 20 without us running a play for you. And then if we run a play for you, every other time, maybe you can get 40 sometime. But those are the things going on behind the scenes that people don't understand. But after watching him for a couple games, believe me, he's got my attention. I think the dude – I came into the draft saying that I think if they were to able to get him, I think he was the desire at 5.
Yeah.
But if they were able to get him, that he would, I saw him turn into an all-star, and I think that's what's going to happen here.
All right.
Tim, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
All right, guys. Thank you. Have a great day.
Tim LaComb, Jazz analyst for SEG Media. Join us right here on The Zone. DJ and PK, when we come back, everything you missed in this show next, stay with us.
Accessing. This is Hans Olsen and Scotty G.
Coach Ron McBride's hanging out with us.
This is Under the Radar. Lavani Demooney, Lander Barton, Logan Fano.
Oh, yeah. The Fano boys, both of them, the tackle is pretty amazing. You know, I mean, you look at him, he looks different than everybody else.
Talk about Spencer.
Yeah. The two offensive tackles at Utah are very good. BYU tried to steal those two guys.
They did?
Oh, yeah.
I hadn't heard that.
You got to be kidding.
No, hey.
Coach, that seems like...
I don't make these things up.
that seems like you're repeating rumors, Coach.
No way.
You make it seem like BYU maybe had some money to spend that they were throwing out there.
That is correct.
Catch Hans and Scotty weekdays from noon to 3 on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
9 a.m. Slacker Radio headlines brought to you by Trajan Wealth. Call Trajan Wealth today, your local trusted financial fiduciary. 801-899-7600 or visit the website at TrajanWealth.com. Spent a lot of time this morning talking Big 12 Media Day and talking about Frank Layden as well. 93 years old. He passed away yesterday. Really believe that without he and Larry H. Miller, there's no way the Jazz stay here through the 80s.
Or Brigham Young.
If you want to go back.
I go back. Yeah, I always go back. You can't go forward unless you go back.
I'm not sure I want to go down that rabbit hole and have that discussion with you. That could be the end of the segment.
That's your choice.
It is.
I've always allowed you the freedom to be wrong.
A choice that makes Yock laugh, just the mere thought of that. Where did the time go?
It feels like we're going into both science and philosophy all at once there.
I often merge the two and come out even more confused than when I started.
Richard Smith joined us at 8 o'clock. You can listen to that interview wherever you get your podcasts, on our website. There's a million places. Yock posts it. It is out there in the universe. A lot of his memories about Frank, stories about Frank interacting with people. You were telling stories about Fresno. He told some story about, I forget where it was, but maybe he didn't mention, but the hotel on the road. And as a Miss America pageant here. And the three women walking by burst out laughing. And that was Frank, making people feel good, going out, interacting with people. He had a big outgoing personality.
He did, yeah. And he is a marvel who lived a wonderful life, and now he's going to wake up in a city that doesn't sleep.
Oh, nice. Way to tie it all into Sinatra. Good work.
Yeah.
There it is.
I don't know what you believe, but I believe it.
Richard Smith on the catch he made at the Bees game. That was a good story. Screaming line drive. One hopping off the top of the dugout.
Skidding off of it, yeah. Me and Steve Klauke, several years back, we would do Bees games on television, K-Jazz. Mm-hmm. And I can remember looking down and seeing
Frank at the game?
Yeah. And
with a glove.
Yeah, and then obviously I'd gone on my own, not in a work capacity.
Right.
So, yeah, he was there, and I talked to him about baseball because he liked the Dodgers, and my father was a Brooklyn Dodger fan. My father...
What year was your dad born? Frank was born in 1932.
29.
So, okay, generationally right there. 3 years older.
Yeah.
All the same memories?
My mother was born in 31.
So get that interview and Memories of Frank wherever you get your podcasts. We talk Big 12 Media Days with Barry Trammell. His white hair cutting quite the...
Over the ears white hair.
Over the ears.
Yeah.
He did say he saw himself on camera. That guy needs a haircut. Oh, wait, that's me.
I thought so. Well, why not?
Yeah.
Hey, you're pounding the pavement as a print guy. You're not making a lot of cash. You save money, a haircut.
Save money, space that thing out a couple more weeks.
Yeah.
Or a month, whatever.
And it's white, too. It's completely white.
Snow
it's
white.
White as snow.
Yep.
Yeah. And he stands out, and people know him. And he should be known. He's been doing it for a long time.
He echoed you. It's a wide-open race, and he likes teams that have quarterbacks, and he doesn't know what's going to happen. And there's a lot of good quarterbacks in the league, and he said 7 or 8 teams. He was thinking more how many teams can win. You were talking about, well, who can get to the game, because what's the point of predicting the game right now, not knowing how teams are going to develop and injuries and who's going to emerge.
All you got to do is get second place.
Yeah, just get to that championship game and then figure out that game when you get there.
Or win the tiebreaker.
Yeah.
And see what you do in that game. You get a couple turnovers.
Tiebreakers, man. They just become so – when there's only 10 records you can end up, or there's 16 teams, there's going to be ties.
There almost has to be. Yeah. You look at Kansas last year. There's 4 teams that were tied for the division or the conference, and they went with ASU and Ohio State and some breaker deal to determine those two playing. But you look at Kansas, 5-7 last year, and they beat Colorado, they beat BYU, they beat Iowa State, and ASU scored a touchdown to win the game with like 16 seconds to go.
Kansas nearly swept the Big Four, but they weren't bowl eligible because ASU scored with 16 seconds left.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. And in Tempe, and that was a whale of a game. Obviously, when you're going down the length of the field in under 2 minutes and you score with 16 seconds to go. So that look in Kansas, they don't have their running back, and he was all-time leading rusher there for Kansas, but they do have their quarterback back. So the point I'm making is a lot of things can happen. That's what's going to be entertaining, man. It's going to be a fun league. It's going to be a fun league to see and watch each week. And the Utes have a little bit of a question mark because of last year, but I think that question mark is overstated. And the Cougars have a question mark because of the quarterback. And I'm not sure if that question mark is overstated. Maybe it might be legit. Because we remember Retzlaff for the pick against the Devils and the pick against Kansas and the first half end of the game. But he had some moments in which he led you to victory.
Utah down the field at the end of the game. Oklahoma State down the field at the end of the game.
Huge wins, that looked like they had losses.
That's the thing, trying to go too much off last year when we know all the personnel changes. And plus, there's so many one-score games in the league. And you think some of those games flip, some of those don't. And you can completely scramble the standings.
Exactly.
And inevitably, some of those games have to work out
I don't think there is a favorite.
Just a wide-open horse race.
I believe it is.
Get to 7 wins.
Well,
8 if you can.
Going back to Barry Trammell, he walked over to me yesterday and said, hey, are you willing to put together from the Utah side of things, like your perspective on a preseason poll? He's putting together, asking people from across the league. And I said, well, have you gotten any clear indicator who the favorite is? He says, no, like I said, it's wide open. He said, every ballot I'm getting from people has a different favorite.
We can all put a poll. I put together a poll, but
it was the third or fourth one I filled out.
It's just as meaningless as any others.
The other polls.
I mean, I think I can make cases.
Make a case for Texas Tech.
And that's what I did.
Make a case for Iowa State.
And I had them second. That's what I did.
But I could sit over here and sell Baylor and ASU.
Easily.
Right.
And Kansas State is always good. So, make a case there. And then you get into the factor of who's playing well, who's playing poorly when you play them. I think ASU gets Kansas when they're a little down. BYU gets them when they're winning.
Well, yeah.
And who's available? Cincinnati gets ASU when Levitt's out.
Utah gets Baylor when Baylor is not going well. Later on, Baylor's going great.
Game, but
It was, I know. But it's still a point. Stuff changes over the course of a season.
So, and there's so much that we don't know in terms of injury and who gets nicked up. You hope that everybody's as healthy as they possibly can be, but the reality is there's going to be guys who are either going to suffer season-ending injuries or a case of Connor Pay, long-term injuries in which you miss a bunch, or in the case I just said, Sam Levitt, who misses a game, and they lose that game. Right? Well, fortunately, he gets back. My guess is if he missed 2 games, they probably lost both games, and then they're not there.
Right.
But he only missed 1, and that allowed them to go ahead and finish strong because he got back. And good for them. He misses 2. Probably lose both of them, and they got 3 losses. Still a much better season than everybody anticipated, but not that level of season. So you don't know.
The other point Barry made, and his interview is also available wherever you get your podcasts, on our website, whatever you want to do. He said it's too bad ASU didn't beat Texas because it could have changed the perception of the league if the Big 12 could beat an SEC team in a playoff game on a big stage.
I would disagree with that to an extent, because I think in the history of the Devils program, they've never got more acclaim for a loss.
Sure, but what would the league have gotten for a win?
I don't think it would have got much more, because then if you go ahead and get blown out in the next round,
then they still just say,
sometimes
see?
be happy with what you have.
So
Texas wasn't that good.
The notion that right, because you can't say, well, look how deep Texas went in the tournament.
I mean, that's what
because they
it's
did,
the old
but they wouldn't
BYU
have.
thing. They beat A&M. Well, and A&M's not good that year.
So move the bag back.
Yeah,
on the
so
Big 12.
That's why I don't know that I totally buy that. I think ASU did enough for the Big 12 as their representative.
Will getting to the semifinals get them a second team? Because I totally bought when you were telling him about the Pac-12 issue. It just became the elephant in the room. Well, you can't get in the playoff. Yeah. Well, you're not going to get in the playoff again. It became the story.
Right.
And it did. 100% agree. And the Big 12 only getting one team in, it feels like we're going down the same road. The number's different, the conference is different, but the attitude's the same.
Right.
You don't have more representation in the playoff, well, then you're no good.
Right. And it took on a life of its own. I do think what they need to do is make sure that they have great non-conference season. Now, yesterday, went through and was looking
talking
at
about all the big games.
Yeah, and there wasn't.
I think you had an
whole
Oklahoma
lot.
State kid on because they were playing Oregon.
We did, and he looked exactly like the bully in the Christmas Story.
You brought that up with him, and he's heard that. He's heard that. I was listening.
Oh, it was 100%. Oh, no, not again.
Yeah, right. Here we go. All right, DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. Your feedback coming up next. Stay with us.
And it's all over almost here.
Don't go nowhere.
DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. Time for your feedback. What did Frank Layden mean to our state? Jazz Nation. Playoffs when nobody thought the Jazz could. Drafted Stockton. Drafted Malone. Brought in assistant coach Jerry Sloan. We would not have the Utah Jazz right now without Coach Layden.
What does the sun mean to light?
Everything.
That's what Frank Layden means to the community, to the Jazz. I went to a baseball banquet for high schoolers, and who was the guest speaker?
Frank Layden.
How'd you know?
Because you wouldn't have brought it up otherwise.
And it was way up one of those canyons up there.
Up there?
Yeah.
In Ogden?
Yeah, way. Yeah, I don't even know.
Beyond Ogden?
Somewhere up there.
Well, there's multiple canyons. I need a better clue.
I know. I don't know. It was years ago.
All right.
I don't get up there much.
Yeah.
But it was up the canyon a little bit, a rustic place, and there he was. Yeah.
And he had stories, and he made them laugh.
Oh, yeah. And it makes you feel good. One of the there was a story a BYU guy told me when Coral Canyon development opened in St. George, they had given Lavelle a house for advertising purposes, and I remember him doing the advertising. It was after he retired, and he was there, and there was some kind of meeting, and his assistant that was always with him told me this story that he heard one of the people in the crowd say, "It's so great to have Frank Layden here." And it was Lavelle Edwards. But those two were really good at what they did and then brought a lot of positive attention. You can see the similarities between the two, and they can deadpan as well as anybody. And they brought attention to the state. Sonny Dykes, coach at TCU, his father was a legendary coach down in Texas, and he was telling us, it might have been before we were on air, I can't remember, but he was telling us a story how he grew up around Lavelle Edwards because Sonny's father and Lavelle were super tight. And they had that ability to bridge all sorts of gaps.
Yep.
There were no gaps
with
in
those
people when you're around Lavelle Edwards and Frank Layden.
Right.
They were two of a kind, and they were such great assets in their own way to our community.
What did Frank Layden mean to our state? Eric. Oh, man, he was a gem. He was a funny, friendly guy, and he did a lot to help the Jazz and to turn them into a winning organization.
He brought identity to the Jazz when they didn't have it on a much bigger level than just Salt Lake and Utah. And he did. And this morning I'm driving in and I'm listening, I'm flicking around and go to I want to hear if they're talking about Frank Layden on the basketball station, the NBA station. And they were. They were telling funny stories all frank of stories of he asked a player, what's with it? What's with you? Are you apathetic or ignorant? I don't know and I don't care.
He used to do, if you're old enough, Yak probably got it from his dad if he knows about it. The videos, and you used to be able to buy them, and they'd mail you the VHS tape with all the videos, all the bloopers. But now just pop up on social media for free instantly. But in those days, and he did something with Marv Albert sitting in a locker room. And Marv was the man in the NBA, so they've put Utah on the map.
They've put the full versions on YouTube, and trust me, I have gone back and watched. I watched a lot of them growing up, obviously, on VHS tapes, but they are now on YouTube and readily accessible all the time.
And Tim LaComb brought up the time when he whips out the comb to get the slick hair of Pat Riley. And Pat Riley, who was all business.
He cracked up.
He did.
He did. It was funny. It was very funny. Yeah. And it really it showed Riley's human side because he was always up there with an attitude at that point. And
all business.
Yeah. His persona had morphed during his time in L.A. At first, he was just trying to stay on the horse, I think. But then later on, I'm the guy. I'm in charge. Frank,
that celebrity got to him, and that's the great thing about Frank.
It didn't.
Is he had celebrity, and it never got to him.
No, never did.
He was your neighbor as well as being this big-time celebrity. And some of these guys, they get so isolated by the celebrity.
DJ PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. Jacob Banner coming up next right after the break, right here in The Zone.